Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another amazing session in this afternoon's Rex webinar series. I'm Alfonso Mangubat, and I'm excited to share with you another amazing topic called Teaching in the Time of COVID-19, Effective and Affective Practices for Teaching Online. Okay. So just a background about me. I'm Alfonso Mangubat and I've been teaching for 9 years already. I'm currently working at Key School Manila where I'm the IB Diploma Program Coordinator and the CAS Coordinator, a history teacher, and also an MYP or Middle Years Program Examiner for the IB. Okay? So in this afternoon's talk, we're going to be looking at different teaching practices that I've experienced and used during our school's first run of our online program last March. In this webinar, there will be different practices or different examples that I'll be showing from my teachers and how they did it during the online learning program. So to start off, let me start with a share or a story of what happened. Okay, so last March 10, 2020, we all know that that was officially the last day, or unofficially the last day of the school year, because we all know that the government suspended classes beginning on March 10, and that there would be no classes until the end of that month. However, that was something that we in the IB Diploma Program team couldn't do. We couldn't end the school year right then and there without having to cover the remaining weeks because if there are IB teachers listening in, you'll know that meeting those requirements are actually quite important. And at the same time, we did not follow the usual June to March calendar. In fact, we were following the July to April calendar. So that was something that we had to take into consideration because we still had a little over a month before the school year ended, and there were still a lot of things to do. So, with that in mind, it was really a challenge for us to actually suspend classes and rethink or work or wonder about how we can cover the remaining weeks. And also, on the other hand, when you think about it, since classes were ended and we knew that we didn't want it to end just like that, we needed to continue on. But there's something that you should know about our school. Our school is a progressive school, and in our classrooms, we place an emphasis really on interaction and student engagement. We emphasize the learning experiences and opportunities of our students, and we really put a value in everything that they do. So if you take a look at the pictures in your screen, a lot of our students are really engaged and they love the conversations that are happening inside the classroom. They thoroughly enjoy working with one another. And as teachers, we constantly give them different avenues to express themselves, to demonstrate their skills, and also to really dig into the concepts rather than the content. Because we believe that students learn best when they see the big ideas and those enduring understanding that span different subjects and different disciplines. So that's something that we really wanted to bring into our online learning environment. Thus, it was really important that we continued to, or we tried to bring that experience online. However, with this whole COVID-19 and everything that's happening, we had to move and shift to that online learning environment, which was something that we weren't really familiar with. Though many of us teachers in the IB team had done online training and different professional development sessions, this was usually in our capacity as students. For us to be able to switch from becoming the students to the teachers was something that we were not accustomed to. We had to really look far and wide. And thankfully, we had the whole community and the whole professional learning network available to us. So we asked our friends in IB schools in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, or in different parts of the world, and ask them, what have you done or what are you currently doing in order for you to support learning online? And as you all know, these countries have been doing online learning since January because they've already shut down their schools for that extended period of time. And the 2.5 months of their experience was valuable for us teachers. Even though it was small and contextualized just for their environment, it was still information for us, and we took that information and really set ourselves to ensure that we could provide a learning environment that really requires us to engage with our students. And so we had to rethink what we know about learning so that we could be able to support our students online. And so in the interim period from March 10 to March 15, we were busying ourselves learning all about synchronous learning, learning about online distance education, and also familiarizing ourselves with different applications such as Zoom and Google Meet so that we could properly roll out this learning program that is still uniquely ours and has facets of what we believe in as a school, which is learning that is rooted on inquiry-based practices, learning that emphasizes student interaction and engagement, and learning that is unique and purposeful for everybody. Okay? And so we began our online learning program. And like many of us, we started off as synchronous learning. So here are some of the slides of my teachers when they presented or when they started their classroom. A big shout out to teacher Jed Reyes and teacher Rachel Mortel, my language and literature and psychology teachers, for sharing these slides with me. And so when we started off, I myself included, we made use of synchronous learning activities. So a lot of our learning happened simultaneously. There was a lot of Google Meets and Zoom meetings with our students, and we were going through the content and also showing them different ways to develop their skills and also learning opportunities for the development of their understanding and their concepts. However, like many things that were happening during that time, and also this being something new, it was undoubtedly so that we would encounter different problems. And some of those problems were something that we've read, such as Zoom fatigue. Just imagine that you are a student logging in at 9 a.m. in the morning every day, and then you would have classes until 12 noon or sometimes up to 2 p.m. with a break for lunch from 12 to 1 p.m. And other than that, there was no other break in between. Though we did give, or I did tell my students that if you need to use the bathroom or you need to eat your snacks or anything, then that's fine since we're doing this in an online face-to-face environment. However, it was tiring for the students. They were spending upwards of 3 to 4 hours in Google Meets or in Zoom meetings, talking to one another. And of course, in Zoom, unlike in the classroom, the noise or when students talk all at the same time, it becomes incoherent. Whereas in the classroom, you can selectively listen to a student. But in Zoom, it was impossible because of the limitations of technology. And at the same time, for the teacher, it was also tiring on their end because they were constantly having to do this day in and day out. And at the same time, all of the things that they were doing, we all fell into the trap of doing teacher-led discussions. So instead of letting our students make meaning and find and research their what they know or what they would like to find out, a lot of us, myself included, fell into the trap of teacher-led discussions. So instead of the students making meaning, it was the teachers doing it for them. And I found myself doing lectures and doing lectures and presentations that were an hour or even an hour and a half long, and it was tiring on our end. Apart from that, we were also trying to familiarize ourselves with different tools that would increase collaboration and student engagement in our online classroom. So we made use of different breakout rooms. We tried out different applications. But of course, this was tricky because these were all new things to us. We had never tried out the breakout rooms in Zoom. We were trying out different applications for the first time. So it was a challenge for many of us because, for one, we were not familiar, and our students were also not familiar. So there was that tendency for us to spend a bulk of our curricular time troubleshooting for our students just so that they could become familiar with the functions of the application. Okay. Lastly, as the weeks went by, we started noticing that there were students who would just simply zoom out, so to speak. What they do is they would log into that class, they would show themselves for a couple of minutes, and then they would turn off their microphones and also their cameras. And as teachers, when we would ask, like, so what is your idea about this? And we'd call on that student whose camera and microphone is turned off, we would be surprised to find that they weren't there actually. They were doing something else or they were elsewhere, thinking that just because their camera and microphones were turned off, we wouldn't call on them. And that was a big problem. And we found it also disrespectful, but we knew the why they were doing that. It's because they were getting tired. They were getting the so-called Zoom fatigue. So that was a big issue on our end. Apart from the low attendance, as the weeks went by, we also started seeing students not submitting their tasks. It was something that we had somewhat anticipated, but not really considered given the situation. But we noticed that a lot of the students were not submitting because they were not motivated anymore. They were tired, they were lethargic, they wanted to do something else. And as teachers, we had to give those opportunities for them to take breaks. And with all of these issues in mind, we had to, as teachers, we started working again and thinking, okay, if these were the issues of our students, how can we ensure that it doesn't happen again? Or how can we ensure that our students become motivated or increase their motivation to come to class all the time? And so we started looking again. We went back to our professional learning networks. We talked to other teachers. We read and looked at different research. A big thank you, of course, to Miss Annie Almario and Mr. Reagan Austria's work during the start of this whole pandemic period, where they talked about the principles of online learning. Those were really helpful for us because it gave us a framework from which to start off. And so we reworked and reiterated our progress. So we looked at what is the research saying about online learning, and of course we now know that there are these two big words: the synchronous and asynchronous learning. Synchronous learning is the face-to-face interaction that we did at the start of our online program. And then asynchronous learning is something that we slowly adopted in order for us to give our students a break and also to focus more on the concepts during our synchronous learning rather than having to do lectures and PowerPoints during that time, because it was a waste of curricular time if we're just going to be harping the words in the textbook or from different resources when we could be spending it discussing with our students big ideas and concepts. So why was this really important? Because in a research or in an online class that my teacher did, Teacher Rachel, she saw that the importance of doing this kind of learning is that we need to really reflect on the needs of our learners. What do they need right now? What is the most essential? At the same time, it was important for us to reuse known and proven methods. Instead of having to reinvent the wheel, which really isn't the time to do so, we had to go back to the basics and the essentials. What did we do in the past? What resources did we make use that were effective? And can we apply this in our online classes? And so it was important for us to be able to know that in our physical classes, we have these requirements. But when we transition to an online class or into an online environment, that was something that we cannot do. The demands of a physical classroom is different from the demands of an online classroom. And because of that, we needed to design learning for quick and agile delivery. Instead of spending an hour and a half talking and discussing what's just written in the PowerPoint, we needed to be able to get all of that factual knowledge to the students so that they would understand and they would prepare so that when they go to the to the synchronous sessions, we would be talking about the big ideas and not concepts and factual knowledge anymore. We would spend more time on discussing and consultations and feedback so that we can either improve on current work and also to give students a time for them to really be reflective of what they are doing in class. So with all of this in mind, we restructured what we did. And as you can see from my teacher slide here, that we provided more conferencing and feedback. Feedback during this period is really important because we need to give them that opportunity to let them know that this is what we're learning right now. And we hear you and we see your work. And we'd like to give you feedback because we couldn't do the normal feedbacking sessions where it was easy to just pop in class, or when your students are having their breaks, we can just sit down with them and talk. But we needed time now to give them that structure so that we could give them proper feedback in their work. And one of the best applications that we've used is our G Suite for Education apps. So you can see in the picture on your left that my math teacher, teacher Neil Malyari, was constantly giving feedback to students, giving him his thoughts. He would give his thoughts about their process in learning about mathematics. And at the same time, because of the demands of internet and everything and we all know that internet here is quite slow, my math teacher, who had terrible internet connection, knew that he couldn't be able to reach students via Google Meet or Zoom. So he used this application known as DotStorm, where it's like Padlet, but instead of Padlet just being a one-way or a post it and leave it area, he was making use of DotStorm so that he could hold simultaneous classes with his students. And you can see from the pictures that he would post different problems, and then on the side there would be a chat box where everybody is talking and giving their own suggestions and feedback also on the process that they're going through with mathematics. My teachers also really focused more on curating digital resources for modular learning. We know that time and again, the age-old question is, we are doing all of this, but how do we ensure that we meet, or the content is being met, or content is being followed and all of that? So we looked at the different examples, and my language and literature teacher Jed Reyes, came up with different modules. And these modules, he would send or upload this via our learning management systems so that prior to his synchronous or face-to-face classes, our students would come prepared already. So in these modules, he would have like different research activities for the students to do. Apart from the research activities, there would also be different other research activities that they can work on as they prepare, so that come the synchronous classes, teacher Jet did not have to like do all of these formalities of like talking about post-colonialism or the different messages of Pablo Neruda and his poems, but rather it was really a discussion between the teacher and the students. It was a dialogue of what they had learned and also addressing misconceptions during that time, so that we could be able to provide structured and structured feedback for all the students. At the same time, modular learning is advantageous because we give our students that time after the synchronous classes for them to work on different activities at their own pace. As we all know, we are preparing our students really for college, and one way for them to get used to these kinds of demands is for them to be exposed to this kind of learning wherein they have deadlines to meet, and we give them those different requirements ahead of time so that they can plan it out all throughout the week. And with that, our students were able to focus more on the essentials. And as teachers, we also look back at what is really essential, what is the big idea and the concepts behind what we're learning, so that we would be able to give or we would have a fruitful discussion instead of having a lecture or a lecture in short. Okay. One advantage of having this online learning is that because we've always focused on giving our students or providing our students with different learning opportunities, we placed an emphasis on field trips and inviting resource speakers. But with this whole quarantine, field trips was no longer possible. Instead, we found out that during this period, it was actually easier to bring in resource speakers because now we could simply just invite them for a Zoom meeting with our students. Gone were the days that we'd have to worry about them going to our school on time or worrying about their schedules because we really had to be able to fit it in. And since we were making use of different time blocks with a time associated just for synchronous learning and a time block just for asynchronous learning, we could now invite different members of the community. And we continued that practice of tapping the community for different learning opportunities. My arts teacher, Jerry Crudo, invited different artists to talk about the process that they go through when they do art, and like they shared their reflections, and the students took the time really to ask about the process that they go through as they're doing this. And it was still meaningful for them because they were able to really have a good discussion with those artists and really talk about the process and the product that goes through everything that they do. Okay. Hand in hand with all of this is that we continue to use the existing applications that we've used in the past. So we've made use of a lot of different applications such as Flipgrid, Edpuzzle, Padlet, and even a few interactive whiteboards. And of course, as our students started getting more familiar with these different applications, we continued to use those apps for them to engage in practical learning. And in our science classes, like teacher Amy Octaviano, she was talking about the different processes of the biological processes in cells, I think. And she made use of these interactive whiteboards. And her students, really had a good discussion because they were seeing visually the process that these cells were going through as they were talking about what you see on your screens right now. Fortunately, I'm not so familiar with this. This is very college level biology already, which I'm not so familiar with. And because of that, we really made use of different applications. So we started off with Google Meet and then Zoom. And then after that, we started integrating some of the applications that we know, such as Padlet. And then you have here Pear Deck for Google Slides. And then we have Dot Storming and also Class Marker. Class Marker is an amazing application because we knew that we needed to still provide unit tests and also ways to assess our students. So we made use of Class Marker, which allows you to create exams for the students that are timed and can be opened at specific moments and also closed at specific time elements as well. Okay, and Therefore, we really made use of applications that we've used already in the past to make sure that our students continued to remain engaged and interactive, and our lessons were interactive. It was necessary for us to be able to use these applications to bridge the digital divide between us and the students. We know that interaction is now low, but we still wanted to ensure that there was that element of making sure that um, whatever we do in this online classroom will continue to remain the same even when we're not together. And it is important for us to make use of these different applications because when students are presented and equipped with proper tools, students have ownership of their learning. These different applications really give them the power to express themselves thoroughly, clearly, and in many ways possible. And this is perfect also for students with learning needs and capabilities because with applications, it's no longer a one size fits all approach, but rather an approach that really caters to what they can do during that time. Okay. And then using these technology or using these applications helps them create and share things with each other. Learning becomes even more collaborative when we have these different applications and when we really purposely think about how do we make sure that interaction and engagement continues to remain the center of our lessons. And of course, lastly, as teachers, we have to be mindful on the proper use of technology because it builds strong agency or independence among our learners. So, with all of these in mind, when we think about it, about the different apps that we've used inside the classroom, when we tap the community for different learning opportunities, when we curate our learning resources for modular learning, and also when we provide structured conferences and feedback for our students, the effect really was that our students became more positive and engaged with their learning. And as a result, we ended the school year happier, peacefully, and we were happy that we were able to meet the requirements of the program even on our first year. And so, just before the summer, or just before the students went on their summer break, I sent out a feedback for them just so that I could see or get a snapshot what um, of what online learning was like for them. And here are some of their thoughts and their ideas. So, one of my students liked that they were able to accomplish their task and finish work at their own pace and time, which was really crucial in order for them to continue enjoying classes. One of them was also able to enjoy the fact that they had their usual discussions inside the classroom. The topics that were covered were still discussed in depth, which was really important because we wanted our students to have that meaningful and thorough discussion. And of course, the active participation and listening inside the classroom. Um, Another student liked it because the schedule gave them enough time to prepare and allowed them to work at their own pace. And they liked the calls because it was really a chance for them to see people, not just us teachers, but also their fellow classmates, despite the fact that many of them are always on Viber or in their chat groups talking all the time. But I guess having that different routine also with the students really helped them continue on with the classes. And apart from having them think about like what were the highlights of that program, we also asked like what could have improved or what could we improve as we are moving on to the next school year. And of course, a lot of them were saying that there should be more activities, both individually and in groups, and not just give them out as homework, because of course they still enjoy the collaborative moments with their classmates. In terms of the technology, some of them they did not like having to constantly do screen shares and constantly having to switch screens just so that they could have a good discussion. It was really challenging, of course, for them. Okay, And then lastly, there was still that technology problem that was really out of our hands, such as the internet connection, which I hope would be resolved as they enter the new school year. And so with this feedback in mind, it was really something of a worthwhile experience. We really were able to rethink and reiterate our initial plans in order for us to really support and help out our students during the last 3.5 weeks of learning. It wasn't an easy process for many of our teachers. It was a challenging moment for myself because I was having to juggle the demands of the students and the demands of my team. But as we worked together, we figured out like what are the best ways in order for us really to make sure that the program still provided that same routine for our students, but still give them the challenge that they would normally find in a physical classroom. And so, as we come to the last few parts of this webinar, here are just some things that I'd like you all to consider as you are moving into this online learning environment. First and foremost is the principle or the idea of less is more. I know that many of you have been attending different webinars, different online courses. You've probably read a lot of research about different applications. And in fact, a lot of you are eager to try out these applications. Um, as a teacher, I find that having lesser number of applications or just keeping like maybe five trustworthy apps, the apps that you've used in the past or apps that you have tried out with your fellow teachers before rolling it out is really helpful because first and foremost, we don't want to bombard our students with so many applications. It actually gets tiring for them and for you as a teacher because you're constantly shifting from one application to the next in order for you to be able to effectively teach. Whereas if you have only a select or a carefully curated set of apps or resources, then you'll be able to teach effectively. And so less is really more in this instance. The next thing that I want to put into consideration is that we should manage our expectations. Many of us are so used to knowing what we're going to teach inside the classroom. We have our lesson plans, our unit plans, our syllabi. It's all prepared, but all of this is useless right now because these were all created under the assumption that it would be done in a physical classroom. Going back to what I said earlier on, the demands of an online classroom are unique and different from the demands of a physical classroom. So it is important for us to be able to manage our expectations during this period. If we're going to roll out different applications or if we're going to do different learning engagements with our students, let's manage that expectation. Let's not hope that, or let's not expect that it will turn out perfect at the beginning. Let's also take into consideration different elements in learning. Let us take into consideration the internet connection of our students. Let's not expect 100% attendance during this period. We know that students should have a hard time connecting. And as teachers, we also have to be gentle and to be empathic towards our students. Let's give them the time for them to really work on the tasks that we give. Let's not be so strict with deadlines, but give them really ample enough time to prepare. And we as teachers also need to manage our own expectations as well. Let's hope that everything turns out well, but let's also prepare because the really the devil. The devil is in the details. That's what I was going to say. But really, it's all about preparing ourselves and making sure that we can see already the outcome of what we're going to be doing. Okay. Lastly, and actually the most important, is that it's really a perfect time for us to connect and communicate with our students. Let's not use this time to just rely on technology and hope that all of the learning engagements will sort themselves out. Let's not overly rely on a machine in order for us to be able to teach effectively. But rather, this is the perfect time for us to connect with our students. Let them know that we're there, that we teachers understand the problems and the challenges that they're going through. And at the same time, it is through this connection that we can learn about the challenges that they're facing in our own classes. Because going back to what I said earlier, it's important for us to constantly have consultations with students. Carve out 15 minutes of your day to just talk to that student and let them know that what's troubling you. It could be academic, it could be personal, and just to let our students know that we are here for them. Because, again, sometimes our students definitely need an adult in the room. So let's take this moment to really rethink our practices, really rethink about how can we can connect and um, support our students during this time. These examples that I've presented may not necessarily work in your own learning environment, but I sincerely hope that it gets you to think about how you can help your students and how you can also prepare for um, for the online classes as we enter this new school year. So once again, thank you very much for spending this afternoon with me. I'm really thankful that you took the time, and I hope that you enjoyed and learned something. Once again, I'm Alfonso Mangubat, and you can connect with me on Twitter. I have this is my username at Teacher Forest. At the same time, I've also created different resources on online learning and also some tips and tricks on my YouTube channel, which is Alfonso Juan Mangubat. You can just search me there and watch some of the videos that I've created. Once again, thank you very much and have a good day. Let's now open the floor to your questions. Hey everyone, hello, good afternoon, and thank you for joining me for that webinar. Now that the floor is open for any questions, I've received a couple already. So let's start off with the first question from Freddy Mia Beltran. Their question is, online learning is good for those students who have access with internet. What about those learners who are in the far-flung areas? Well, honestly, I have no idea how to. I don't know the answer to that question or like the perfect solution to that question. But what I can tell you is that if you're going to look at the news and everything that the Department of Education is doing right now, there is really that thrust towards helping students learn during this period, most especially those that do not involve the use of internet technology. I think one thing that we have to really also have in this, or the mindset that we should have during this period, is that even though we are learning from the comforts of our home or outside of the classroom setting, we shouldn't always be reliant on the internet, but rather there are many technologies that are currently being looked at and addressed as well in order to fully support our students. And the Department of Education, alongside different private companies such as like this Rex Bookstore, they are working hand in hand together to ensure that there are different modules that can be sent out to students who have no internet access. They are also exploring like the different alternative learning systems, such as the use of radio and also different TV programs. I've heard like different entertainment or TV companies starting to tap or work with different teachers so that they can create online, not online, educational programs for students when they watch the television. I also saw a few weeks ago on the news that there were some schools that would also utilize the different spaces in the community in order for them to help out students. Like they would send out modules to, let's say, the church or to a common area like the yung plaza of the village, and then that's where students can congregate with social distancing, of course, in order for them to learn. They could watch those educational videos there. So even with the limitations that we have in terms of the internet, there are still a lot of technologies that are capable of reaching our students in any part of the Philippines. It just requires a lot of innovative thinking with the current technologies that we have. So it's something that we should also take into mind, that let's not also be too reliant on online technologies, because the online learning or online distance learning doesn't also necessarily mean that you're always reliant on the internet. Okay. Next question from Aaron Jed. What are the indicators that teachers and students are ready for online teaching and learning? Well, when we started off this online program in our school, we also did not know whether we were ready or not. But what we did see from the start of our online program was that a lot of students and teachers were eager to really try out the different methods that we were using. And I guess a good indicator of whether teachers and students are ready for this is their enthusiasm. It's actually a very powerful motivator when you think about students who really want to learn, and who are eager to access the different materials and resources that you create. And seeing them be able to create these different products and also show or demonstrate their understanding in different ways is actually very inspiring and motivating for us to continue this online learning. Okay. From Lutz Calcania, what is the best application to be used in teaching grammar and literature? I've used Flipgrid to get, when I was still a grade school teacher. I've used Flipgrid so that my students can, what do you call this, can show what they've learned, or they can take a video of themselves demonstrating like what they've learned. So they could do like a read aloud, or they could be sharing a story that they wrote so that they'll be able to hear themselves, and you can also check their grammar and literature and their grammar at the same time. In terms of literature, I would suggest that you make use of like different online collaboration tools like Google Docs, so that they can write their stories and then you can provide feedback for them. You can also give out corrections as well. Though there is, of course, that chance where students would make use of, let's say, the autocorrect or the spell checker, so that they might, in terms of whether you're assessing or that or not, then I think that's something that you'll have to really rethink also. Okay. So from Jorgen Embuscado, if internet connection is not possible, what is another option to be done in order to employ blended learning? Well, again, going back to one of my slides in the presentation, we made use of different modules. Though that had like the aspect of internet with that. If you're going to listen to the Department of Education, and what they're planning to do is that they're going to send out different modules to students, and these do not require what you call it does not require an internet connection. So by sending out different modules for the students to work on at their own pace and also within their own capacity, then it's already a way that we can help our students. Though on our end as teachers, there is that delay, or that factor of a delay, because we would have to send this work out, then we would have to wait for that. But if we are careful in our planning and really mindful of what we are doing, in order for our students to really learn the essentials, because as we all know, the online learning classes, it's not the same as a physical class. So we have to do away with a lot of the normal things that we would do and just focus on the essentials. So if we're going to do that, then our students can learn the content at their own pace. And then if when we meet them like through video calls and the like, we could just discuss the different misconceptions and also demonstrate their skills at the same time. Okay. From Mary Bautista, what is the best strategy for online blended learning for elementary students? I would suggest that you have to be mindful of the time element, because in this period, it's not advisable to have like 1 hour or 2 hour classes. In fact, many studies have suggested that for face-to-face learning, it should only be like 45 minutes for high school students. And then as you go lower into the different levels, the time gets shorter and shorter. And so with that, it's really important that you really curate your resources so that when they come meet you for your face-to-face classes, you'll really just be talking and not talking, but you'll be providing feedback, consultations, and really addressing any misconceptions the students have. So the importance here is addressing the essential parts of your lessons, those that involve the big ideas and the enduring understanding. In terms of strategies, it's really a good mix of synchronous and asynchronous learning, wherein you'd have in your asynchronous time, you could send out like different modules that are very project based so that you can really focus on students developing skills and while learning the content at their own pace. And then in terms of their synchronous time, you can use that to again, going back to what I always say, feedback and consultation, because during this time, that is what students need the most. They need to know that their teacher is actually looking at their work and telling them the things that they need to improve on as well. Okay. From Catherine Kababa, how can kinder level learners cope up with online learning? Well, at the kinder level, it's important that we provide them with different activities for the development of their skills. Here in kinder, I know that there's always that argument of the content versus the skills, but I think now it's really important that we focus more on the skills of a kinder learner. So it's really getting them to have hands-on exercises and also really vocalizing or verbalizing what they want to share in during that online period. Okay. From Mylene de Vera Galpa, online classes are a good idea these days. How about students who cannot afford the gadgets? Do you think it could help the idea of educating in this process? I'm not in online classes are a good idea, but students cannot. Do you think it could help the idea of education? I'm not entirely sure about your question, but with the current situation right now, online classes is just one form of learning or one facet of learning that can be employed by the school currently. That's what we did, but as you can see from many other schools as well, they are employing different methods and strategies. They're making use of blended learning techniques. They're balancing out their synchronous and asynchronous learning. They're providing different avenues so that students can access different resources all at the same time. Okay. Another question, the application for mentioned from the slides, are they available for the mobile? And how can this assure that teaching or learning is effective? Majority of these applications are online, and we also made sure that when we use these applications, it would not entail additional costs on either the teacher, the student, or even the school. In terms of whether this is effective, it depends entirely on how you're going to use this inside your classroom. In terms of effectivity, it worked for us because we properly oriented our students. We provided them time to explore these different applications. And we also made sure that we did not just roll this out unintentionally. There has to be a clear indicator or there has to be a clear purpose of why these technologies can be used. And only then can you assess as a teacher whether the students used it effectively and whether you as a teacher also used it effectively as well. Okay. And another question from Jemlyn Mirana. How could struggling learners cope up with the new normal in education? From what I've seen with the way my teachers used different modules and also different strategies, it's really going back to the purpose of what you're trying to achieve in your classes. Remember that everything that we're doing right now, at least from my standpoint or from my perspective, is that we have to focus on the essentials. We have to do away with many of the things that we used to take for granted in class and just really focus on what do we want our students to know, what do we want our students to understand, and how can our students apply what they've learned um, in our classes. And so for the struggling learners, this could actually be the perfect time for them to to excel, because in previous models it has always been at the teacher's pace or at the pace of the whole classroom. But if we're really going to be thinking about how we can make sure that all students are supported, like we provide them with a variety of resources, videos, news articles, pictures, even online simulations, then they'll be able to cope because they have a variety of materials that they can access, which is not normally found in a traditional physical classroom as well. Okay. From Rosemary Amparado, how do teachers assess students' output in online classes? We made use of a lot of rubrics. I know that that might seem counterintuitive because you'd rather prefer like a paper and pencil test, but many research has already shown that, or have suggested and have actually proven that providing an online paper and pen test during this period is not actually helpful for students. It actually increases their anxiety and their stress. So what have other schools and what have other countries done to assess their students? They provided them with different avenues, such as learner portfolios, where students gather evidence of what they've learned. This could be like pictures, reflections, even products. Let's say if they're making a project, they would gather all of this evidence and present as a learner portfolio. And in those learner portfolios, you can see that how your students have been able to process that information in order for them to apply what they've learned in different contexts. Okay, so rubrics is one way, learner portfolios another. You can also have like different, we can also go the route of the college or of college, wherein you would have like thesis defense styles. That's where you can really see if your students actually worked on a project or not. Okay. From Luella Manolong, may I ask what online approaches you utilize in teaching TLE subjects like cookery? I'm not a TLE teacher, though I have actually advised my TLE teacher or advised the TLE teacher in our school how they could do it. YouTube is really is your best friend right now, especially if there are some things that you cannot do. So because with cookery, you can search for different recipes. But as a teacher, you can also take the opportunity to create different explainer videos. You can have your teacher demonstrate how to cut or different forms of cutting in the kitchen. So not really a chef, so I don't know what are the different forms of cutting techniques there. But nonetheless, so going back, your teacher can Imelda Unabia, how to prepare the modules for our learner. First off, really think about the assessment objectives. What do you want your students to learn? Think about the enduring understanding and the enduring questions that you want your students to find out during this period. Really focus on the concepts and as much as possible, try and front load all of your content in those different modules, so that when you meet with them or when you have your online classes, you're really just having a good discussion of and picking up where they're having problems in and the like. Okay. And so the last question from Ron Aniche, I believe both will have flows, but can we really assure good education in online learning? Can it lead to a more serious problem in the future, like health and physiological perhaps, or psychological perhaps? Yes, that is those are well documented concerns, and these are concerns that know that other schools have also taken into consideration. That's why even in our own setup, we designed our online classes to make sure that there is ample enough time for our students to have brain breaks or physical breaks. We've also made sure that screen time is also taken into consideration so that they don't have to spend the whole day in front of their screens. As much as possible, we'd also like to provide them with different ways so that they don't have to access the computer all of the time as well. Okay. But in terms of good education in online learning, it really depends on what your school believes, what your teachers, their philosophies also, in order for them to really provide a good learning experience for any student. Okay. So that's about all of the time I have with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. And I am really thankful for all of the